The United States appears to be edging closer to a direct confrontation in the Caribbean. The Trump administration is expanding its military presence near Venezuela, while Russia and China accuse the U.S. of pushing the region towards crisis. According to a Wall Street Journal report, American special operations aircraft now deployed in the region. At least 10 of those Osprey tilt rotor planes arrived from the Air Force Base in New Mexico, reportedly boosting U.S. capability for rapid missions across the region. At sea, American forces continue seizing tankers and striking suspected drug trafficking boats as part of an expanding blockade effort. Venezuela, backed by Russia and China, called for a second emergency meeting at the United Nations, accusing Washington of unlawful aggression.
There is no war in the Caribbean. There is no international armed conflict. Nor is there a non-international armed conflict. It is therefore absurd for the United States government to attempt to justify its actions by applying the rules of the law of war.
Pueda cumplir a cabalidad su mandato.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN, meanwhile, told the UN Security Council that the single most serious threat to the region is what he described as transnational terrorists and criminal groups. In fact, Russia and China criticized the U.S. tactics at the United Nations, calling it cowboy behavior, intimidation, and one that violates all key norms of international law. Moscow has warned that Washington could soon target other Latin American governments seen as unfriendly, and reports say Russia has started evacuating families of diplomats from Caracas. Listen to this.
The United States has been continuing to deliberately foment tensions around the friendly nation of Venezuela under the pretext of combating drug trafficking and the terrorist threat.
In fact, China echoed those concerns, urging restraint and warning that unilateral sanctions deepen instability.
China opposes all acts of unilateralism and bullying and supports all countries in defending their sovereignty and national dignity.
As the U.S. builds pressure with troops, aircraft, and its rhetoric, the question is whether this standoff stops short or an all-out conflict is imminent. Ukraine's president has finally surrendered to Putin's demand. Zelensky has told reporters that Ukraine is prepared to pull back its troops from parts of the eastern Donetsk region that remain under Kiev's control and turn them into a demilitarized zone as part of a possible peace deal with Russia. It's a major development, and it also marks the closest that Zelensky has come to addressing the contentious territorial disputes in Donetsk that have repeatedly derailed those peace talks. After nearly 4 years of the war and months of the US-backed diplomatic efforts, this proposal signaling a new willingness to compromise, but also highlighting the significant gaps that remain between the two sides. Zelensky made it clear that any Ukrainian pullback would be conditional, and Russia, he said, would have to withdraw its own forces from an equivalent stretch of territory in Donetsk. And according to the new draft peace plan unveiled by the Ukrainian president, the demilitarized zone could be expanded to include not only areas vacated by the Ukrainian troops, but also Russian-controlled areas from which Moscow would pull its forces. Zelensky has stressed that any withdrawal must be mutual, and the exact size and boundaries of the proposed zone remain unclear. However, Zelensky said it could include the Ukrainian-held cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, which form Kiev's last major defensive line in eastern Donetsk. Under the proposal, the two sides would be separated by a buffer zone administered by international forces. So far, the Kremlin has given no indication that it is prepared to accept any arrangement short of full control over the Donetsk region. The demilitarized zone proposal is part of a revised 20-point peace plan drawn up by Ukraine and the United States in recent weeks. The plan addresses a broad range of issues, including potential territorial arrangements, security guarantees for Ukraine, and an ambitious framework for rebuilding the war-ravaged country. Zelensky has described the plan as Ukraine's best chance to end the war and said it is now up to Russia to decide how to respond. And he confirmed that the United States is presenting the proposal to Moscow and that Kiev expects a response by Wednesday evening. The Ukrainian leader said the proposals largely reflect a joint Ukrainian-American position. However, Kiev and Washington remain divided on two key issues, reportedly. First, the final status of Ukrainian-held territory in Donetsk. Number two, control of a major nuclear power plant currently occupied by the Russian forces. On this, Kiev offered to manage the nuclear power plant jointly with the US as a form of compromise. And Western analysts are saying that even if the proposals are accepted by Washington, Moscow is still likely to reject them. The Kremlin, remember, has repeatedly stated that its primary objective is full control of Donetsk, either through military force or negotiation. And it has also dismissed any return of the nuclear plant to Ukrainian control. Zelensky has expressed cautious optimism that Russia may avoid an open rejection to prevent damaging relations with the United States. He warned that a rejection should carry serious consequences. Remember, territory remains the most difficult issue in any peace deal. Ukrainian officials saying giving up heavily fortified areas could leave the country vulnerable to future Russian attacks. And there are also humanitarian concerns, including the displacement of civilians, and ceding territory could deliver a major blow to Ukrainian national morale. And for these reasons, Zelensky said any demilitarized zone would require approval through a national referendum. The president has also described the potential demilitarized areas as a free economic zone. Analysts say the language may be aimed at appealing to U.S. business interests and Washington's economic priorities. The plan also envisions a massive reconstruction fund to rebuild Ukraine with strong participation from U.S. and European companies. Zelensky says the United States and Europe could each contribute up to $100 billion with a long-term goal of raising as much as $800 billion. It remains unclear whether European countries have formally committed to the plan. On security, Zelensky said post-war support would come from a coalition of the willing, which is a group of around 30 countries, which could include the deployment of European forces in Ukraine. The Kremlin has already said such a move would be unacceptable. With major divides still in place, it remains absolutely uncertain whether this latest peace push will actually end that war. But for now, all eyes are on Moscow.
तमाम शोबों में करप्शन बदलवानियां हैं।
Pakistan's own political leaders are now holding up the mirror to its army. And what stares back is a harsh, uncomfortable truth of hypocrisy. In fact, senior Pakistani lawmaker Maulana Fazlur Rahman has called out Islamabad's double standards on cross-border military actions, drawing a direct parallel with India's Operation Sindoor and Pakistan's own recent tussle with Afghanistan.
If you say that we have struck at the centers of our enemy and you call this a justified statement, then India tells you, I have attacked Bahawalpur, I have attacked Muridke, I have struck at the centers that were attacking us in Kashmir. Why are you objecting to India?
What you heard there was an indictment coming not from India, not from Afghanistan, not from the West or any other part of the world, but from within Pakistan's own political and religious establishment. It strikes at the very heart of the Pakistan Army's Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir's narrative. A few days ago, and after 7 months since the Pakistan Army failed to achieve its objectives on the battlefield, Asim Munir shifted from facts to faith. Instead of military accountability, Munir has claimed what he called divine help during the May military confrontation with India. We told you about this. But the rhetoric did not even stop there. Speaking recently in Libya, Asim Munir went beyond his role as an army chief, projecting himself as a self-appointed statesman, trying to position Pakistan as a leading security provider for the Muslim world. Maulana Fazlur Rahman's statement cuts through that posturing and rhetoric, exposing the hypocrisy. It exposes what we have been saying for years, that Pakistan's security establishment practices different rules, one set of rules for itself and another for the rest of the world. Terrorism is condemned only when it is convenient. Cross-border strikes are illegal unless Pakistan carries them out on its own. Civilian casualties are tragic unless they occur across Pakistan's own target line. And faith is invoked when facts fail. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.